Nessa, we're delighted to have you here all the way from Dublin. And Nessa brought her mother with her to this special town.
No, my mother brought me here.
Mother brought you here to the, what is it, Martin? Martin's was gone out. The best. Go on, say it. Yeah, so every week, Nessa, here in Mayo, we win something, or in Westport, we win something. So today we won the best tourist town. Nessa's roots are in Mayo. Nessa's mother's parents came from Swinford and Kilchima. So it's a return home in many ways. And Nessa's story, her wonderful book of poems, which you sent down to me after you launched it, a really good collection, but it traces a somewhat parallel story, can we say it like that? But I'll let you do all the explanations of it. Nessa O Mahony.
Hi there. It's lovely to be here. I haven't actually read in Mayo before, and I am thrilled to make the debut here, of all places, among friends. As James said, we have strong links. I've been hearing about Mayo all my life through stories that my mother has told me about her family. And I guess when I started writing poetry, it didn't take me long to begin to kind of imaginatively explore those links. So I thought what I'd do tonight is maybe concentrate on the poems, both from Trapping a Ghost, which, gosh, is nearly 10 years old now, which tell a particular episode in my grandparents' life during the Civil War. So yeah, there are absolute links. It was wonderful to hear Liam channeling his mother in a way and bringing her back through the poems, because I think that's what we try to do when we lose our parents. We're looking for links all the time, and it's great to be able to keep that contact through poetry. So it was lovely to hear your work. Thank you. So some of the grandparents' adventures from the Trapping a Ghost book, and then read some of the poems about my grandfather, but also my father in the most recent book, her father's daughter. So hopefully that'll work. So I'll open, as I said. My mother is the source. There she is, sitting on the sofa, looking like the Queen of Sheba. And I think she's telling me that I need to talk louder. So I will, Mother. My mother is the source of all great stories, and I grew up hearing about Ballinasloe, her own hometown, which was like an Eden, but also Kilchima, where she would spend some of her summer holidays, and where the world was very exciting during the first decades of the 20th century. And my grandfather had died in 1970, so I was 6 when he died, and to be honest with you, I don't have many physical memories of him, photographs definitely, but I can't honestly say that I remember him as a person. So he's really somebody who I came to know through stories, through my mother's stories. My grandmother, on the other hand, I knew very well, because she lived till the late 80s, and she stayed with us for a number of times, taught us how to play cards, how to cheat at cards. She was a huge character. So when my mother told me that there had been a sort of a Civil War-based romance involving my grandparents, it was something that I wanted to try and explore. So I imagined, there was a box, in fact, it's there in the front of this book, a writing slope that my grandmother had, and it came down to me. Now, it was completely empty, but I imagined that it was full of letters and journal entries and the story of this romance, which I proceeded to tell. Successfully, in the sense that several people thought, well, if the letters were where, why didn't she just present the letters? Why did she bother putting them to poetry? I said, I made them up! But you can't please everybody. So now, I'll start with a few from Writing Slope. And this is a sort of an introduction to my grandmother as a foreword. You came for good when I was 17. The living room was your court, where you taught us how to cheat at games of whist. Your laugh, half guffaw, half chesty cough. More wolf than grandmother when we put too much water in your whiskey glass. At night you'd snarl if someone tried to take your fags away. Later there were hospital stays. Your face took on the pallor of the backless gowns they made you wear. Once there was a fuss when you lost the radium they plugged you with. You died. A good age, they said. A life well lived. The pieties expressed as we cleaned up after funeral guests and prepared to forget. Cleaning out the spare room, I found your writing slope, a box in plain wood, too modest to be walnut, the surface sullen with neglect. I lifted the lid up. Beneath, a pile of yellow scraps, receipts, old bills, then your journal, leather-bound, handwriting faint. Here and there, newspaper cuttings, letters, cards you pressed between pages. And at the back, a photo, sepia and centre creased, two figures awkwardly posed, the formal setting of a studio. He looked too young for his clothes, you familiar, with a soft warmth I didn't recognise. I took the journal out, turned pages gingerly, lest the spine snap, drew faded letters out of envelopes, read your thoughts, shook the dust off a tale you never wanted to tell the grandchildren. So then we go up to the past. And this is Up from the Sticks, Dublin, 15th of August 1919. Dublin! What a grand word to start this new journal. Sarah gave it to me as I left, made me swear to write in it every night. She knows me too well. I can't believe I'm here. And better still, Kiltimagh is 140 miles away. The train took forever, all those stops, boxes thrown on and thrown off, people coming and going. But we finally arrived, chugging into Kingsbridge in a commotion of smoke and whistle and yells. I kept my head, found the sixpence Father gave me, told the porter that I'd like a cab. I think I impressed him with my poise. Not so the taxi driver. He knew of Belgrave Square, but shook his head when I asked for Mrs. Phillips. Kept on saying, "But what number house, miss?" in flat Dublin tones. Then Sean Flood walked by. I hadn't seen him on the train, though I'd heard he'd be in Dublin at the same time. He saved the day, gave directions, and shared the cab as far as Rathmines Road. He seemed a gentleman, for all they say. What a place this is! Wide streets, houses with porticos, steps leading up to doors painted in every hue, brass knockers with lions' heads. And what gorgeous clothes! If Mother got her hands on that stock. Mrs. Phillips just stuck her head around the door, lights out apparently. So no more until tomorrow when the course begins. Good night, Dublin. Sleep well. So it continues. She's doing her course in Dublin, meets Sean a bit more. Sean, by the way, is not my grandfather. So this is Portrait, Dublin, 15th of November 1919. And I might just grab the drink that I forgot to bring up with me, if you don't mind. This one does get a bit dry, as my grandmother would say. Portrait, Dublin, 15th of November 1919. Sean said it would be a grand joke to pretend we were on honeymoon. We'll do it right. All the trimmings. Lunch at Wynn's, a stroll through the green. We can get our portrait taken in Richmond Street. He's full of strange notions, that man. So off we went to lunch, and 2 of the tastiest cutlets I've ever had. We were fierce elegant with our petit pois on white porcelain. The waiter was a Tracy from Enniscrone. He winked at Sean and kept the wine flowing, so the room tilted when we finally rose and floated all the way down Richmond Street to a Georgian house with a smudged brass plate that said Green's Photographers. We went inside, eyes adjusting to the dark. The air was heavy with dust and acid smells. Mr. Green was small. He had no time for chat as he showed us where to stand next to a large fern in a copper pot. He took some time arranging us, fiddling with an oriental screen. He was ready. Stand stock still. And we froze. I thought of mother and father, their portrait gilt-framed over the piano, imagined where ours might go one day. Then something flashed. There was a burning smell, and it was light and dark at the same time. Things cleared, Sean paid, and we left, blinking in the glare of Richmond Street. So she would have stayed, but the political situation was getting a bit more turbulent in Ireland, as you know, and she's brought back to Kiltimagh. And the problem is that political divisions are sort of breaking down old friendships, and Sean is on one side of the divide, her family on another. So this is where my grandfather makes his first appearance, new man in town. Kiltimagh, 1st of May 1922. Father heard it in the barbers. There's a new CO at Swinford, a breen from Ballina, tough, they say. He shot a peeler in Newcastle, apparently, got sent to Parkhurst. He's supposed to crack down on the irregulars. It seems that Dublin's had enough of all those shows up the mountains, boys drilling from noon to night, then rushing through town in armoured cars. They say Sean's joined them. It's true, he's secretive these days and won't explain when he can't meet me. But I don't understand what this row's about. We have the treaty now, and England's beat. Why battle over words? So she was supposed to meet him this particular night, June 21st, 1922, and he doesn't show up. So she's writing later the next day. Incident at Brady's, Kiltimagh, 23rd of June 1922. I can barely write. It happened this evening. Mother pouring tea. We heard shouts, shots, people running past. A woman's scream cutting through the uproar. Then a car went speeding down Main Street. Father went out, telling us to keep our doors locked. It seemed hours waiting for him. I knew before he said it, by the way he looked at me. He said there'd been a row, a crowd of irregulars at Brady's shop. He said Sean shot Thomas Brady dead, and Sean had been hurt. Thomas was in school with me. He was a gentle soul and a lovely baritone, many's the sing-song we had with mother and father. I kept seeing him lying there, blood oozing out on the shop floor. Ah, his poor mother. But Sean couldn't kill a man. They must be wrong. But I don't know who to ask, and I daren't go outside with father watching me. I must get word to him. I pray to God he's all right. I'll keep praying all night. So then on the 28th of June, Tomás is buried. Country funeral. The burial was today. Father insisted, saying it was our duty. I knew the women would look me up and down, whispering in clusters outside the church, "That's the one who was walking out with Flood." The church was thronged. We had to push to get to the benches at the back, close to the little flower, one candle lit beneath her. I kept my eye on that, on the flicker on the red glass, so I wouldn't have to look at the altar. From the front came Mrs. Brady's sobs, so steady and regular it was like the church taking breaths. The Latin couldn't drown her out, the breathing in and out of her tears. The priest spoke of cruel times, and didn't we know we shouldn't shelter those who had turned their faces from God? He paused, and in that instant I felt the congregation had turned and were staring through me. I just kept watching the flame, the red glass flickering to a heartbeat as a woman wept. So Sean has to go on the run. He's kind of spirited out and over to America. She's expecting him to send for her any day, but he doesn't. And meanwhile, she's been interrogated, but won't give any information away and won't give any photograph or any information about Sean. So the narrative moves on to the point that she marries him. She marries my grandfather, who refused to allow her house be searched. And this is a poem from quite late in the narrative, and it refers to Now Voyager. Many of you, I'm sure, remember the film with Paul Henreid and Betty Davis. Famous last lines about why ask for the moon we have the stars. Now Voyager, Ballinasloe, 6th of August 1943. Mary B. was going on about it in Dooley Snug. The latest thing, she said, with Hollywood's finest, drooling about that German, what's his name? I told her she'd be better seeing to her family and feeding her man. He looks half-starved when he comes in. But on she went, mouthing about cigarettes and wanting the moon and some such. I thought I might just go and see, sure what harm. So I found myself snug in the back of the Plaza One Bob's. Moira was minding the kids, Pat off somewhere. And there was that Betty Davis looking fierce drab, and the ocean liner, and the handsome man, and the way he lit the cigarettes 2 at a time. It gave me a start, how he handed it to her, lit straight from his lips, gentle, like it was the rarest gift he could offer. That's what Sean did after that Dublin hop. He walked me home and we stopped on the corner of Belgrave Square. Do you want a smoke? He asked. I, never one to admit, said, I do. And he lit up, held it between his lips. I could see the red glow of the tip in the dark. Then he handed it to me slow-like, and I took it in a dream as if there was nothing else in the world but that cigarette. I placed it between my lips and I took a breath in as I'd seen my brothers do. I felt my lungs close over like I was deep in water and going under for the 3rd time. I coughed, and he laughed so hard I thought he'd split himself. Take it slow, he said. So I tried again, breathing easier, in and out, in and out. And I felt light, like I fitted into the high-heeled shoes I was wearing. So that was their Civil War romance. Some of it was real, some of it was imagined. I kind of get more and more confused about which actually did happen. But there was certainly a shootout in Kiltimore in 1922. My grandmother's friend definitely shot somebody who died of his injuries. He had to leave the country. My grandfather definitely did refuse to have her house searched. They did marry 4 years later. So, I think writers do have a certain permission to fill in the blanks. But this is more factual, I promise you. continued to be absolutely fascinated by my grandfather's history and story, and decided to do some family research to try and find out more about him, because like many men of his generation, so he was born in 1893 in Swinford, as just outside Swinford in Derry Ronan, actually. But like many men of his generation who saw incredible things in his life, he never talked about it. He fought in World War I for the Royal Ulster Fusiliers, so that's him in the cover there. Was invalided out, promptly joined the other side, the IRA, went to the north of England where he was shooting peelers, not killing any of them, and was sent to prison to Parkhurst, released for the amnesty, joins the Free State Army, so he's involved in the Civil War here in Mayo. He's a commandant in Castlebar. And then he's in the police force for the first 20 years of its existence, the new Garda Síochána. And he never talked about any of the things that he saw. He never talked about the World War I experiences. He never talked about the Civil War. Well, there were some stories my mother would describe. There was an ambush in Glore outside Kiltimagh. Granddad was injured and lost a toe. So the kids, the McCanns, would come up from Ballinasloe every summer and go out to Glore looking for his toe. But he didn't, that generation did not talk about trauma. They did not talk about the suffering. They just experienced it and were stoic about it afterwards. And I think because of that, many of those stories have disappeared entirely. We didn't even acknowledge the 200,000 Irish men who fought in World War I until the last decade or so. It wasn't possible for that to be part of our national narrative. But purely from a storytelling point of view, there are so many wonderful stories that, I guess that's what's capturing me as much as anything else. So I wanted to try and do that more justice in this book, and the parallel, I suppose, was the gradual loss of my father. Like your mum, my father died in 2010, but he'd been ill for about 4 or 5 years before that, and it was a very heart-wrenching experience for all of us because he was, ill for quite a while. So there were two parallel mother-daughter, father-daughter relationships going on. So I'll just read some poems that give you the more factual, I suppose, fairer account of my grandfather, and then maybe some father poems to finish. So the title poem, Her Father's Daughter. The first time I know, standing hip high to her as she lifts the receiver on the old black phone in the dining room. She must have cried before, but I've never seen it. Never made the link between my garden falls and those grown-up trails of moisture on her cheeks. On mine, the rough feel of tweed, the pressure of knees I cling to as her hand goes to lips, hides a silent oh, like air escaping. She'll make that sound 40 years later in the corridor of a hospital ward when she hears that her man died without her. Right now, we're innocent of patterning. She's left the confines of a suburban dining room, is hearing the tale of how her dad threw his head back, laughed his last, and I'm clinging on tighter. Perhaps she releases me. Perhaps someone else takes my hand and guides me to where I'll wait out this mystery. So the story was that Grandad and his brother had a discussion about who would go to war, who'd go back to Derry Ronan and farm. Maybe that story gets told a lot in families, but it was certainly one that was told about my grandfather, Michael McCann. Casting lots. History doesn't record how you decided it. The flip of a threepenny bit, a card, a straw, in an unnamed pub somewhere in the English Midlands. You'd never mistake those grey tufts for Derry Romaine. I doubt a white feather was behind it. More like you'd caught a thirst. The American liner stub still in your pocket. History does record that outward journey. SS Baltic from Queenstown, 27th of June 1913. You may have swum back just in time to have a pint with the brother and decide who'd go, who'd return to farm and family. I tried to picture the pair, two young broths, shoulders hunched at the bar, a tolerant English hand serving stout. It would become a lifelong devotion. High cheekbones, pale blue eyes weighing the future up. Family lore is mute on where or when you got yourself photographed, kitted out as the pride of the Munster Fusiliers. Your granddaughter omits the royal. Did your tongue elide it? Like a child from a dress-up box with your wide belt and your peaked cap, though the shaved head is a clue to the war game you're playing. Your right hand holds a cane, as if the photographer guessed the future legacy. Family legend is mute on when you sent it. I'm picturing it in slow motion, an envelope spiralling down like a chicken's feather, a scurry from the back to gather it up. Did it have pride of place on a mantelpiece? Did your mother turn a leaf on the family Bible, position you face down on the book of Joshua? So this next poem, this about 2 years ago, my mother and myself went to Ballinasloe on a bit of a recce. And Mum grew up in a house on Church Hill in Ballinasloe. We were talking with Oliver about it a little earlier. So I'll read this for my mother, but also for Oliver, if she doesn't mind sharing the dedication. Church Hill, Ballinasloe. In your wake again, Mother, heading down Dunlow Street, chasing another tale. You're an expert guide, though it's 65 years since you last came home here. We've been by the barracks your father traced in accounts of parades and drills and emergencies. The decades drop away. The bold child reappears as we climb the former Victoria Avenue. I pictured the unruly troop of boys and girls, blonde, blue-eyed, the devil in the detail, that your plainclothes DI father couldn't talk down from trees round Clancarty's monument. At the top of the hill, the Protestant church looks ancient, venerable, though appearances deceive. A fire burnt it out, friend or foe. It would have been just rebuilt when you jostled for views of the gentry en route for service, then raced past the almshouse to the wall just by the door to line up in order of height and await inspection. We arrive. You haven't been inside since 1945, though your dreams have brought you there constantly. An office refit cannot disguise the tall stairs reshape into a slide for 9 brothers and sisters. Back bedroom rearranges into dormitory, then sick room. The window deep set at the front with a view to the clock tower. That the view's now blocked doesn't seem to bother you. I envy you this, Mother. I envy the clear sight, the instant recall, the glimpses of all that prelapsarian joy. Something else that got handed down, we still have it, it's under the stairs in my mother's house at the moment, my grandfather's walking stick. An honest thing, ash shaft, plain, crook smooth, no gentleman's cane of silver or amethyst tip, of snakewood. Crafted to bear weight, the tonnage of trench foot, splintered bones, toe lost in the ambush at Glore. Another conflict, the same cost. Shoved to the side or brandished as a threat for the boys' divilment. They used bullets as toys. Did you silently smile as they echoed you? Needed more each year. Then daily once another war or emergency broke out, and you drilled the boys from the town to defend the realm against farmers' sons. Decommissioned once again into night watchman jobs in Coventry, in Cricklewood. You still looked tough. The stick found a hook in boarding houses. You'd only take it out after hours. It came to our house when you died, spent decades under the stairs till your daughter needed it, trimmed it down to size. A match for mine. I hefted up. It still bears its weight. So I'll finish with just a couple of the other dad poems. And you know, I think any of us who have lost parents and wrote about it, there's always a strange mix of compulsion to do it, but incredible guilt that we are doing it at the same time, because it just feels like we're making material out of the most grievous loss. And for a very long time I didn't feel like I could write anything. But of course I did. And this poem sort of looks at that, but it's also, it's echoing in possibly in Trapping a Ghost, or maybe even the first collection, Bartók. I mention a picture that the poet James Simmons had made, a charcoal drawing that he did of his mother on her deathbed, which used to hang in his house, poet's house, when I was in Island McGee. And I remember the first time I saw it being really shocked that how could anybody possibly make a picture when their mother is dying? I couldn't get it. But it was only much later, when I had grown up, matured, experienced loss myself, that I began to understand why you do anything you can to keep the contact, capture that. So this poem, I suppose, is about that. Portrait of the Artist's Father. Years ago, when I was young and hadn't lost anyone, I wrote about a sketch a poet made of his dying mother. My words were cool, disapproving, those tidy co-strokes of the dead. Now, what else can I do as I sit and watch you sleep one of your countless dress rehearsals? Eyes shut, but darting constantly, lids pulsing with each twitch as you fight the demon of the hour. I trawl for metaphors, imagine corollaries for the fluid filling your lungs, some dark assailant emerging from the shade, hands flexed. Your mouth works wordlessly, offers no clues. You may be reading from another script, borrowed perhaps from the novel you've taken weeks to read. My page has been empty for months. Forgive me for filling it. So I was in Wales. I'd gone to Wales to do a PhD when my father first got ill. And again, any of you who've been away and have had a relative sick at home can know that's a kind of an agonizing position to feel in, because you're so powerless, waiting. So this poem is called No News is Good News. The sun has returned, drawing me out to the seafront where you take your constitutional. The last time you came here, I was 3,000 miles away. I had to imagine your promenade down the pier, then your choice, left for the cliff walk, right to Gallows Point. Just names then, innocent of intent. Now, 60 plus nautical miles from where you lie on your hospital bed, the wind whips up, gives excuse for the tears that spring unaccountably often, though there's no threat, they tell me. No news is good news, I'm told. And like a bold child, I feel cheated that I must wait here to check the phone for messages, take my place in the queue for family updates, cling to each sign of progress relayed long distance, a tube removed, an improved gulp promising food. Strange days. Did I ever tell you that once, back home in Churchtown, glancing round your door to say goodnight, I caught your bowed back, your bent knees, a 78-year-old Christopher Robin? I crept out, embarrassed. Last night, I knelt by my bed, joined my hands, bowed my head, said the words you taught me 4 decades ago, though the order may have been wrong and the list of the dead lengthened. I'll finish with one set in Achill Island, not that far away, over there. Deserted village, Achill Island, in memory of my father. A gap between showers, blue filtering half-light, as we take our chances on the slopes of Slieve Moor. Those who'd called it home knew about impermanence, the reach of bog, the gaping sockets of roofs. Haphazarding lazy beds, slip slides of water pouring down the side of the mountain. We settle for the track, the safety of shale and quartz. Sun wets white shards, crystal lures us as the track forks to where a burnt-out digger acts sentinel over oil slicks. Wind chimes music, a plastic bottle trapped by bogleaf. The quarry opens out, slag heaps improbably white, as if someone had cleared snow into neat piles, or had scattered detergent like there was no tomorrow. No white sheets to be spread out, no single rosebud to be left beside a hospital bed. Thank you.